Adios, soldiers. You see this? This is like the only piece of Canadiana merchandise I have in my home. But I wear red 24/7 and I put on a white tank top, so I feel like, good enough. If you don't know me, my name is Rachel and I currently live in Vancouver, Canada. And I'm not gonna lie, being Canadian, it's pretty sweet. And what do we got in Canada? We got geese, we got lots of mountains, we got Tim Hortons. We have Celine Dion, Carly Rae Jepsen, and Tate McRae. We got some sick-ass dinosaur fossils and free healthcare. And you know what else Canada has to offer? Some bangin' fantasy authors. As you can see, I read mostly fantasy, and it's always nice to be able to highlight some authors from your home country. Canada as a whole is incredibly diverse, and it's wonderful to see the different cultural influences that all of these authors use in their works. And I didn't do this on purpose, but these are all women authors. And like, are we mad about it? I don't think so. I have some new favorites, I have some old favorites, and I have some people that I think you definitely should check out. So without further ado, grab a drink, grab a snack, and buckle in. Let's talk ABOOT, my favorite Canadian fantasy authors. On a side note, I think the ABOOT is definitely more of an East Coast thing because they have more of a Scottish and Irish influence, although I definitely have been clocked online being Canadian by saying about and like really doing the out. On another fun fact is that the Vancouverites also have an accent because we don't say Vancouver, we say Vancouver, like a little bit of a G in there. Vancouver. Anyways, there's something fun to pull out at parties. The first person on this list gives me incredible nostalgia because I didn't realize that when I fell in love with these supernatural paranormal werewolf novels that Kelly Armstrong was a Canadian. The Summoning series was one of the first YA series I ever really got into, and I was obsessed with this. The original Team Edward v. Jacob. Okay, were you Team Simon or were you Team Derek? Our main character Chloe is like a genetically modified necromancer, and she's in a like troubled teen home, but all of the other kids are also genetically modified creatures of myth. And what's extra fun about this is that it's actually tied to her other adult series, the Bitten series. Elena Michaels was one of my very first book girlfriends in the Women of the Otherworld series. Werewolf Witch Mafia. I also definitely read this way too young because this was at the time where I was going to my library and checking out every single book that had the word vampire or werewolf in the description. And I definitely read some things that a 15-year-old should not have been reading. But it still stands, so this is a very nostalgic read for me. And I loved this world. It was so unique and so gritty and dark, and the first world beneath our own that I fell in love with. But if you don't like paranormal stuff, that's okay, because Kelly Armstrong is a machine. I'm like, this is just like some of the stuff that she's written. How do you do this, Kelly? She's historical, she's thrillers, she's paranormal, she's YA, she's romance. Like, my God, woman, slow down, have a nap. But also, thank you very much for helping me when I was a baby reader. Oh my God, my freaking neighbors are blasting music outside right now. And so I don't think you can hear it because I do have a close-up microphone. However, they are starting to play Nickelback, which is very funny and very thematically appropriate. Second up is a new favorite of mine. I've just found her this year, and oh my God, I cannot wait to read everything that she ever puts out. It's A.B. Paranik, the author of Where the Dark Stands Still and A Treachery of Swans. She's a YA fantasy writer, and both of these have been 5-star books, and two of my favorites that I've read this year. Where the Dark Stands Still is inspired by her Polish heritage, and it's this beautiful, haunting, enchanting folktale, fairy tale story about the King of the Woods striking a bargain with a witch for in exchange for her powers, she will help him break a curse upon the wood. These books were written with me in mind and my particular tastes because, like, oh my God, the writing, it's so beautiful. It's so haunting and weird. Eldritch gods and men with horns and trees with eyes and cats with human teeth. Ooh, baby. I don't know why that does something for me, but oh my God, it does. And then I finished A Treachery of Swans back in June, and again, so stunningly beautiful, where Odile plans to infiltrate the French court and steal back a magical artifact for her wizard father, and in doing so, she turns her childhood best friend into a swan to take over her identity, but then the two of them end up having to work together in order to, like, overthrow a coup that was being planned. It's moody, it's atmospheric, it's luxurious, and it's perfect for theater gaze. I don't know if you could tell, but I am an ex-theater kid, and this really does pull on my love for theater, and specifically for artifice. There's always rot beneath the glamour and love beneath the pain, and these are two beautiful stories of love and longing and forgiveness. So I'm really hoping that not only does she continue to write more, but that she also branches out into adults. I would love to see her push the envelope a little bit. Thirdly is an author that I've paid many loonies and tooties in order to see, and that is because she's my friend, and I might be a little bit biased, but I also think I'm right. I found this author because of Book Talk, and I love the fact that she's Canadian because it makes traveling to go see her much, much easier. And that is AJ Vrana. If you are looking for a dark, gritty, sexy, nasty, morally gray, action-packed series with creatures of myth and sometimes werewolves, then oh baby, do I have the story for you. Okay, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna start with the Chaos Cycle. That's the Hollow Gods and the Echoed Realm duology. Then, when you're done that, or if you don't even want to read those ones and you're just like, whatever, I just want like a hot, sexy werewolf man going through trauma, you can pick up Wild Blood, because Wild Blood is the continuation of the series, but it happens at a totally different timeline with different problems, so you don't have to have read the first two to also read it. When we first meet Mia and Kai, Mia is a struggling university student who gets haunted by these dreams of this crow woman goddess creature, and Kai is a sometimes werewolf who stumbles into the town that Mia is in as girls in the town start to go missing and the folklore surrounding the town of Black Hollow starts to build to a frenzy. And then Wild Blood follows Kai and Mia 5 years after the events of the Echoed Realm, and there's a whole new game in town. There's more creatures, there's more werewolves, and there's more dreamwalkers. AJ also writes horror novels, which I do not currently have, and she also has a bunch of smutty novellas available if you wish for some more fun with these two. And I also happen to know that she is writing a couple of incredible romanticises and a new horror that should be out in the next year or two, so I'm manifesting it. You may look at this sexy shirtless man being choked by a living shadow and think, oh, that's just like a smutty, silly little paranormal romance, when in fact there is a lot in here on trauma and codependence and independence and grief and loss, owning up to your mistakes and what it means to be a good person in a relationship. I really love both of these books. I think AJ's a great writer, and she's also very funny online, so go follow her on Instagram. Oh my god, my chicken nuggets. All right, sorry about that. Now I'm back, and I also got myself a fun drink. Truly, what is the point of life if I don't get to have a fun little beverage whenever I film? Can someone who knows science please explain to me why things with pomegranate are so delicious? All right, where were we? So y'all know that I let my freak flag fly when it comes to fairy lore and fairies. And so this next book, I suppose, is no surprise that I love so much. My girlfriend got me into this series, and I'm so glad that she bullied me into reading it because I love Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. There's just something about her curmudgeonly academic in her 30s and her pet fairy prince going through a series of portals into other worlds where there's creatures of lore and monsters of myth, just so that she can get tenure. We first meet our scholarly character Emily as she is writing an encyclopedia of Fae folklore, where she and her rival academic Wendell end up in the same small Icelandic town studying the Fae, and as they are there, they're unraveling a bigger mystery, not only that centers around the Fae folklore, but also the town itself. I've always been fascinated with Fae because they're human, but not quite. They're an amalgamation of horror and nature. I just find that cross-section of magic so fascinating, and it's really interesting to see a character look at those things through the lens of academia. Emily is very heavily autistic coded, and the way that she looks at life and scheduling and fact and fiction is so refreshing. Even though she doesn't always make the best decisions, you know, sometimes she sees like a growling hilltop and she's like, I'm gonna go touch it for science. She's not turned away from the Fae world because it is grotesque. She is fascinated by it, and she can see the beauty in their otherness. And Wendell is just such a fun character and such a great foil for her. It's charming and bizarre, and some people see this as cozy fantasy, but I'm like, guys, people get eaten in this. Like, I guess we all have different definitions of the word cozy. I also found out that this author lives on Vancouver Island, which is a couple hours away from me, and it's a place that like I can visit fairly easily. So I'm like, oh my god, there's a non-zero chance that I could just be like wandering around Victoria and bump into Heather Fawcett, which is fun because she seems like a creature of folklore herself. And speaking of somebody that I could possibly bump into on my way around Vancouver, oh my god, I am killing it at the segues today. Literally, I did run into this person a couple of weeks ago because I moderated for Sylvia Moreno Garcia as she did her Vancouver stop for her newest book. So I obviously have to recommend Vancouver's Queen of Gothic. Sylvia's a very well-known author. She's a very well-known Vancouver author, but she's like very elusive. She's like the Fae of Emily Wilde. Literally, I moderated her tour stop. I got to talk to her one-on-one for The Bewitching, and she told me that the last time that she had done an event in Vancouver was 10 years ago. Sylvia, please, the people, we want to talk to you. And something I can appreciate from her is that she's written so many books over such a wide variety of genres. She's done magic realism, historical witches, she's done horror, she's done straight fantasy, she's done gothic, she's done sci-fi, she's done vampires. So if you want to get into reading her, I would say Mexican Gothic is a great place to start. Creepy historical gothic set in Mexico in the 1950s, where a girl's cousin goes to live live with her new fiance in this beautiful mansion in the hills, and then starts getting letters that things aren't as they seem, and she goes up there, and then chaos, gothic stuff. But if you're more like me and love fantasy, then Gods of Jade and Shadow is a Mayan gods and afterlife trials, where our main character accidentally releases an ancient god from an item that he was trapped in, and that leads to the pantheon in general like having a meltdown. Or if you're looking for something that is a little bit more light fantasy, or you're a more like thriller mystery person, then The Bewitching, her latest, is probably more for you. A multi-generational horror saga following 3 women all bound by their Mexican heritage and also a family curse. We get commentary on the whitewashing of academia and this interesting intersection of modernism bumping up against spirituality. My main complaint of all the books that I've read from Sylvia is that she never sets anything in Vancouver. And I'm like, come on, girl, you've set things in Massachusetts and Mexico City and like London, and like give Canada something. Although at the event, she did talk about maybe setting a horror novella in Vancouver in the next little while. So Sylvia, I will hold you to that. Next up is maybe the densest fantasy complimentary on this list, because you want to talk world building, you want to talk family drama, you want to talk about gang war politics? She's thick with 3 C's, and I know she's intimidating, but I'd say the best ones are, because Jade City by Fonda Lee, girl, she is the winner of the World Fantasy Award of 2018, and you can tell. This is a vaguely historical parallel timeline to our own world, where on the island of Kekong, multiple families of green bone warriors, who are people who use jade to do magic, have been running the island and keeping it free of foreign invasion. But now the Great War is over, and a new generation is taking over in a clan war that may break the city. It has bold action that doesn't pull its punches, mafia clans of magic users who are trying to both level a city and wrestle back control in a rapidly modernizing city where foreign imports are threatening to disrupt their way of life. I love that we never know what's coming next in the best way, because there's so many people behind the scenes pulling strings. I do believe we follow 3 or 4 different POVs, some people who have magic, some people who have been ousted from the family. It's this push and pull of new and old and loyalty and family and betrayal. I was gonna say I love Shay the most, but I might love Hilo the most. I don't know. Everyone, you want to root for everyone, even though they're all kind of terrible. They're so realistic in their gray morality. Sometimes their best isn't enough, and what are you gonna do when everyone else is playing dirty? But I feel kind of bad because I haven't finished the series yet, so feel free to yell at me in the comments to do that. Now, as a West Coaster, you know, a resident of the PNW and someone who grew up on spending summers on the coast, I love the ocean. I feel like Canada is really well known for its lakes and lake culture, but goddamn, do I just love that salty body of water. I gotta get in there whenever I can. And where I am, off the coast of Vancouver, in Vancouver Island, we get whales and dolphins and moon jellies, and bull kelp, I don't know, I love the ocean. The siren song of the sea continues to wail at me, and that's maybe why I connected so deeply with this winter fantasy piratey ocean lore book. Canadian author H.M. Long has written the Winter Sea trilogy, the first one being Dark Water Daughter. A high stakes, high seas, high fantasy that mostly centers Mary, who is a storm singer. She can control the weather with her voice, and she is wanted by pirate captains. And then we have Sam, a disgraced naval officer with a kind of broken magic that he's trying to control. And from the very beginning, you are dragged into this world of politics and plotting and piracy, betrayal, redemption, dark magic, especially when we get to the Gistwold, which is some of the coolest fantasy magic that I've ever read. Gists or geists are like tree spirits. They live in trees, and so each ship will have its own gist that like protects the ship, but also sometimes people can be vessels for them too. The Gistwold is like another ethereal dimension, so sometimes monsters from there can get pulled through by powerful enough magicians. And as we get further into the series, we get more of these rotted gods and eldritch monsters and corrupted magic rituals, along with the tension and politics of the Winter Sea going to war, not only with itself, but with its magic users. She's so good at entrenching you in your senses, but which could be good or bad, because like when you're soaking wet on the deck of a pirate ship with smoke in your eyes and stuff getting flung everywhere because of cannon fire, and there's like an eldritch horror from another dimension screeching above you. So if you, like me, were a Pirates of the Caribbean girly, you absolutely need to get your hands on this. For this next book, I am bending the rules just slightly, which is fine because I can mentally parkour myself into or out of anything that I put my mind to, because one of her most famous books is sci-fi, but sort of magic, and then the other one is just purely magic. But if leaving her out of this video is wrong, then I don't want to be right, because I need to talk about Amal el-mohtar. She's just... You know, if you somehow managed to create the technology to distill sapphic yearning down into a perfume, and then I bought enough bottles to like bathe in it, that would still not give me the feeling that I get when I read her books. She co-authored one of the most beautiful sapphic sci-fi stories of all time, This Is How You Lose the Time War, with Max Gladstone, where two rival agents in a time war, one from a planet of machinery and science and one from a planet of nature, are tasked with killing one another but fall in love with each other instead. It's weird, but it's gay, and it made me cry. And then her solo debut novella, The River Has Roots, which is a story of two sisters who live on the edge of fairy that cannot be separated even in death. It has a very Grimm's fairy tale vibe about it. It's very beautiful, but it's very strange, and the ending is surprisingly gory. And like I said earlier, I am an absolute freak when it comes to fairy novels, especially weird fairy novels, and this also itches that part of my brain. And talk about a sapphic non-binary icon, our love interest Rin is a fae that doesn't have a shape, and sometimes will appear as a storm, or sometimes as a wind, or sometimes as an animal. Also, music and grammar make up the magic systems of this world. It's so bizarre and it's so interesting. Switching tenses or using contractions changes something into what it can be or will be, which goes along with the way that they cast spells and see time. It's so trippy in the best way. See, this is why I don't do drugs, because after I finished this, I was like, you know what? I don't think I need to experience anything else with like an ethereal chemical imbalance. Like, I read this and this fucked me up enough. Yet again, an auto by author that I really hope puts out more books, and particularly puts out more full novels, because this, what is this? This is just a taste. I don't want just a taste. I want the full banquet. Oh shit, hold on. Let me just pop on that break. There we go. We are now down to the final two. And this is the final fairy book on this list, I swear. What if I told you these are not the sparkly rainbow fairies with wings that you are expecting? What if I told you that this is an Indigenous author who took her own experiences with cultural loss, colonialization, and the history of her people, and put that into a book with fairies and elves and humans, and had an assassin dealing with her own interior trauma and a series of addictions in order to overthrow the tyrant king and reclaim her people and her magic? It's the Broken Blade Saga by Melissa Blair. Oh my god, do I love this series. I know I've yelled about it before, and I'm gonna yell about it again. This is a dark, traumatic, romantic, action-packed fantasy series that follows our main character Kira, who is the King's Blade. She is an assassin sent on a mission to kill a new mysterious figure called the Shadow. But as her mission brings her into the land of the Fae, she starts to realize everything that she's been told is a lie. Her identity as a halfling may actually be her greatest strength, and she may be the key to bringing magic back to this barren land. Now, at first, I love this series because Fae, assassins, court politics, cool creatures, espionage, blowing up castles. Like, who doesn't love that kind of shit? But also, oh boy, surprise, there's trauma, because get ready for this stunning, heartbreaking, heart-wrenching book about loss and grief and self-harm, addiction, a cultural loss of history, being cut off from those that love you, and ultimately the burden of being the chosen one. As the series goes on, we get this beautiful ramp up of found family and friendship and learning self-forgiveness and falling in love again and having that be okay. The intricacies of class politics in this world are also very interesting, with the halflings, with the elves, and then with the magic users, and how Kira is trying to balance and represent all of them. And if badass queer female fairy assassins taking down colonial powers wasn't enough, there's also a shadow daddy. Riven, just that man. And before we come to our final author, I do want to give two brief shout outs. The first of which is another Vancouver author who I have come across many a time. It's Shirin J. Zhao with their series Iron Widow, a YA sci-fi that has a bit of fantasy but is more highly political dystopian. So I just want to give them a shout out that I love this book, but it is not fantasy, so alas, it does not fit. And second is a big nostalgia favorite of mine, and it's O.R. Melling, who wrote The Golden Book of Fairy, a compendium of the 4 books of the series, which are The Hunter's Moon, The Summer King, The Lightbearer's Daughter, and The Book of Dreams, which I credit as what got me into fae books in the first place. Beautiful Irish folklore, fun tricksy stories of Under the Mountain, and devastating stories of wild and unpredictable magic. It's so wonderful, but I'm not really talking about middle grade. All right. Last one, let's do this. Last but not least is an old favorite who keeps surprising me with her new works, who is in fact a lovely lady to talk to, who has one of the best romantasy voices in the game. It's our Canadian romantasy superstar, it's Danielle El Jensen. I've met Danielle a couple times over the years. In fact, I also moderated her Vancouver tour stop for A Curse Carved in Bone, which is the sequel to Ink, Fate, Inked in Blood, and she is what I look for when I think of romantasy. She has this perfect intersection of action and politics and interesting world building, while also having the romance and the intimacy of her stories be threaded throughout, so it never feels start and stop. It never feels like it overtakes the fantasy aspect of it, but it's always there. I first fell in love with her through the Malediction trilogy, which is a YA series of a girl getting sold to trolls under the mountain in a magical bargain. And I really like this enemies to lovers setup, even if our main character, whose name I think is Tristan, it better not be Trevor. I'm pretty sure it's Tristan. Even though at the beginning he's a little bit of a baby, by the end of the series, I'm like, yes, diva. And even though this is like magicless fantasy, the Bridge Kingdom has such intricacies of its politics and of its trade. Laura and Aaron's relationship starts off as a bit of an insta-love, but really deepens when it comes to things like loyalty and betrayal and facing the consequences of your actions. And the saga of the Unfated Duology is her Viking fantasy, where our main character is the child of a god, and her magic is like tearing Skaland and Norland apart. Our love interest has a sick-ass fire axe, and eventually she has powers over the dead. Goals. And then her other series, The Dark Shores, I think there's like 5 of them now. I know that was like pirate Roman Empire fantasy, and I do need to get my hands on that one. And I fully admit I might be biased because I love fairy folklore and I'm an absolute sucker for Hades and Persephone retellings. And like I mentioned earlier, I just have a fascination with the sea, and the Bridge Kingdom and A Fate Inked in Blood have a lot to do on the water. But with romantasy being so overrun, it's kind of this watered down sea of mediocre books. Haha, water jokes. I think Danielle is out here putting the romantasy in the romantasy. And that's that on that. Thank you all for joining me this afternoon. Those are the 10 Canadian authors that I would trade my best flannel for. We got to the end of this video and I feel like I should have made more Canadiana jokes. Like, yeah, I read these every day as I ride my moose to work. When I don't like a book, I feed it to my pet beaver. Obviously, I read 1,000 books a year because Canada is covered in snow all the time, and what else is there to do out here besides dog sled and yell at the moon? It's currently 26 degrees Celsius at my apartment today, so that myth is fully busted. Although I was visiting my girlfriend a couple hours away from me last winter, and it did get down to -40. So please leave down below some of your favorite Canadian authors. Of course, I left a ton out. I didn't talk about sci-fi or YA or romance or what have you, and I would like to know more. I've lived other places in my life, admittedly for not a super long time, but I can honestly say that Canada and Vancouver is my favorite place to live. And, you know, Canada in itself, it has its drawbacks and it has its sordid histories and its issues like any other country does. But truly, I do love being Canadian. I love being a Vancouverite. And I'm not just saying this so that I can have more book friends move to the West Coast. If you can even afford to live in Vancouver, because it's one of like the highest priced cities in Canada. And like, girl, I spent $80 on groceries the other day and I got like 3 days worth of food. It was ridiculous. But I'm allergic to dairy, and my favorite brand of non-dairy yogurt came out with like 3 new flavors and a Greek style soy yogurt, and it's so good, and it's like $9. I think I'm hungry, so I need to go and make dinner so I can stop thinking about cheese. You know where to click to like the video. You know where to click to subscribe. I hope you guys are all having a nice day wherever you are, and I will see you all next week. Bye!